Well, my graphic art skills are starting to get up to date, so I'm hoping I'm going to erase some of the stuff I've done in the past because it was just giving me kind of experience with doing lectures. So if you haven't seen any of the earlier stuff, the content was good, but the presentation wasn't what I really wanted. I had to go with what I had at the time. So it's not like they weren't of any value, it's just that I just didn't have the stuff I needed to really do stuff that I really wanted to present. But there's a lot of new information that's come up, especially with the Kepler mission on the solar system and some new data and stuff. So, you know, we're getting a lot of data from these more robotics missions and getting some more theories on the origins of our solar system. But the problems I see still is stellar evolution. They're stuck in stellar evolution. And I just don't see evolution out there. It's getting more, as we understand quantum physics and quantum gravity research. I was watching some of their, on the YouTube, some of their lectures. And what I see described in what they're describing in their lectures is the witch's ball. And it's all that information on those lectures can be combined into one witch's ball. And the witch's ball is a holder of information, and it doesn't matter where you go in the universe, whether it's the sun, whether it's just a single cell organism, and a woman's egg before it's fertilized, it's just a witch's ball. Or any planet, or the Earth, or even that's been proposed that the universe is actually round. Well, that would make sense, and all goes around in the concept of a witch's ball. And I kind of look at a witch's ball as a source of information. Also, it's something that you can concentrate all that information and utilize it for anything you need to. So, you know, when you get into how galaxies are formed and stuff, there's nothing that say that eventually all that stuff that's lectured over quantum research on YouTube. I would recommend checking that site out because they got some good stuff. I've been watching it myself. And take that information and you combine it into a witch's ball and actually use that for constructive purposes, whether it's actually creating a galaxy. We've now got a visual of the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and what they discovered is just a hole out there, just a ball, you know. And they said, well, it's a black hole. But the problem is that when the sun rotates around that witch's ball at the center of the galaxy, it doesn't draw any it's the only place in our galaxy where a sun is actually revolving around something else. The suns are actually moving. That's how much how much pull that witch's ball has. It's doing something that nothing else in the galaxy can do, because everything else in the galaxy revolves around the planets orbiting around the sun. But that witch's ball at the center of the galaxy is actually doing something that in the Middle Ages they thought that, well, hell, the Earth is the center of our solar system, and everything else revolves around it, even our sun. I guess maybe because of his own arrogance, thinking we were the center of the universe, because we're special, we walk upright, and there's no extraterrestrials out there. But that's not what we're discovering true in today's times. But some of these new concepts and stuff are having an extraterrestrial origin. Even in witchcraft, the witch's ball goes all the way back to the Middle Ages, and I could give you a good explanation of how witchcraft got out there, since it promotes advanced scientific concepts, is that the extraterrestrials are actually visiting our planet periodically. Here's the little thing about it is they were never out there in the public. The good example is I was trying to think, well, how does witchcraft get up in medieval Europe when most of the barbarians don't even read and write? You know, so how could why would an alien want to go up there to barbarian Europe and when they don't even speak his language, or don't even speak a language that they can actually talk to them with. So what do? They create a Druid order. And the Druids are probably the origins of witchcraft, as far as and plus the Vatican. The Vatican didn't promote it. They used incense and stuff, but they really deterred it. They wanted the Roman Catholic Church being the only religion, and it finally came to the point as well, that church is going to be only religion, and there's witchcraft is history. You know, so you know the history of it. But the barbarians, the Druids were a priesthood that wasn't really part of that. They were a secret organization. There's not a whole lot of information on them. And I kind of tend to think that, well, maybe they were trained by the extraterrestrials, and the extraterrestrials would teach them how to read and write, and then the Druids would teach the barbarians how to read and write, and then they would give the Druids some advanced scientific concepts about the witch's ball and some traditions and stuff, and teach and give these barbarians a sense of hope. Because think about 5,000 years ago, and you're a barbarian in a cave, hovered and scared shitless, and there's not a whole lot to live for. They're scared. They don't know how to grow crops. They don't have any way of really communicating with each other than simple sign language and whatever. It's a scary world for a barbarian. So you teach these higher level Druids, teach them how to read and write, and then they go out into barbarian Europe and teach them a basic religion that's based in advanced scientific concepts, and that's where you get the origins of witchcraft. But the aliens were never out there, so it's just quantum physics and the craft are an unseen world. If you go to quantum research, everything that's being described in their research, you can't see, because it's in quantum physics. It's in a non-material world. So now we're talking the craft again. So, but there's a lot of, no matter where you go around the planet, you go to the Mayans, the Egyptians, or whatever, there's these advanced scientific concepts that were put out there that we're only now discovering. So now they have to acknowledge that those advanced scientific concepts were basically known to the barbarians. They were known to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians were one of the first civilizations to have those advanced concepts and stuff. People's Republic of China also has pyramids, and they're perfectly preserved. And I've been trying to dig up information for years on the pyramids in People's Republic of China, but they are very carefully, it's not like it's pretty much a kind of a closed it's not like Egypt where you can go out there and just tour and stuff out there. They've protected those pyramids. It's not ransacked. They're perfectly preserved. Egypt's been invaded. They've had several wars and stuff, and it's still a very a lot of that's good good archaeological stuff out there in Egypt. But Egypt has been ransacked. They've had the Egyptian government's had to sue some museums over in Europe to retrieve some of their stuff, and so but the pyramids in People's Republic of China are perfectly intact. There's not a whole lot of, in fact, I don't know if any pictures. I've been trying to find pictures of inside those pyramids. They can't find them. So, but either way, even in alchemy and mysticism, which was part of medieval Europe also, those are advanced scientific concepts that only now we're even discovering. In fact, I think some of the stuff that is over at Quantum Research, some of that stuff I recognize from Buddhist monks. Some of theirs, I don't know if they brought some information, sent some information out to them, but some of those concepts are also part of Buddhist teachings of Heals Republic of China. So I noticed there's an Oriental woman when I was watching the lecture, and so maybe that came from her, but some of these advanced scientific concepts were known to the ancients. So it's proof that there's been extraterrestrial contact in the past, but nobody knows who or where. It's a kind of a secret. The Druids were a secret society, and that's all the barbarians ever saw. But the Druids could also perform miracles, and so they could control the weather, do a ceremony, and to a barbarian king that was something of value, because if their crops got spoiled, they started starving to death. So if a Druid priest could do certain kinds of work his craft out there, like John God is doing down in Brazil, that's of value to a barbarian king. So he's welcome in the village. So they were always welcome in the village because their livelihood depended on it, because they had crops out there, and they had to be able to depend on those crops for food. Otherwise, they were having to go back out into the hunting gathering society, which isn't much of a life, and having to live in caves again. So civilization begins with agriculture and be able to fish and other things. And so all that came from knowledge. It was transferred probably from the Druids, who probably we know they could read and write, and transfer it down. So that's what's revealed when you go around, search around YouTube and stuff. A lot of those mysticisms and all the mystics and all that ancient material and stuff, a lot of those have advanced concepts, and only now we're saying, well, hey, some of these concepts go back 5,000 years ago. So obviously they have an extraterrestrial origin, because there's aliens out there that had understood those advanced concepts, were able to transfer it over. So anyways, there's some new stuff that's come up. Mainly, first will be a Kepler mission. The Kepler mission was launched in 2009 by NASA, and it monitored the brightness of 145,000 main sequence stars, which are quite a bit bigger than our sun, which is I think if I recall, it's a yellow dwarf. But by January 7, 2015, they detected some 440 stellar systems. This led to an estimate of 11 billion Earth-sized planets orbiting sun-like stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So what they basically discovered is not all the suns out there that they discover had planetoids going around them. So what does that tell us? That tells us a concept of design and planning out there in the galaxy, that not all the stars have planets going around them. So it's like, well, hey, if all these stars came from one big nebula, well, we could see the nebula out there, then they would all have planets going around them. Well, that isn't the case. So what we discover is that there's a conservation of material out there, that not all the stars are going, they're not going to have planets going around all the stars. Or maybe there's just a gas giant out there. They do it by the method that they're using is it's not an accurate means to measure distance, but it does give an indicator of whether there's planetoids going around the stars. That's a good indicator of that. But as far as distance from the sun, I don't think it's very accurate. It's just too far a distance. So it's good information, but it's not something you can actually totally rely on. And it's not like a telescope. We don't have a telescope where you can actually go into look at the stellar, you can see the suns being formed, and you see a stellar disk, but we can't actually see what's going on down there. It'd take the kind of telescope they'd have to build wouldn't just be like the James Webb telescope's going to have, like, think 4 mirrors or 5 mirrors. And if they could have expanded on that, I mean, if you could get a huge space budget and go to all our in the countries and stuff, contribute to it, you could have taken the same design for the James Webb Space Telescope. Instead of just having 5 main mirrors, you could have like 25 or 50 and put them up there piece by piece, and, you know, give the astronauts something to put together up there. And we could finally have a telescope up there that you could actually, you know, look, you could actually, you know, might be able to see actual planetoids, you know, get a reference point, see what's going on in there. Because it's important information to get, so that we can actually prove, I can actually prove that the craft is what's creating those planetoids and what's going on in the solar system during that time. And it's not evolution, but you have to have the data, and you have to have the visual data too. So it's pretty important to, you know, to get that. But anyways, so we know that there's some stars that don't have planetoids going around, and so that tells me there's a conservation. That's not all the material in a nebula is going to be used. Some of it's going to be conserved, and they're going to say, okay, there's a planning commission out there somewhere in the galaxy, I would say a space station, where they're saying, okay, here we're going to take these stars and we're going to make planets, put it around there. We're going to put a Jupiter-sized planet over here and a Jupiter-sized planet over here on this, you know, around this star. And we can put some planetoids here and there. And there's a planning committee. I was like watching a city council meeting this afternoon. And what's going on at the city council meeting? Well, they're running projects. There's a lot of development going on, and so all these contractors are doing buildings and, you know, building stuff. Maybe it's a restaurant, maybe it's a housing complex, maybe it's an apartment complex, but they're going to a commission at the, you know, basically a city government, and they're presenting what they want to do, and city government says, go ahead, thumbs up or thumbs down. You know, there's a vote, and so it's done through kind of a democratic process. And most of that never gets rejected. There were some people that, well, I didn't want this apartment built here or there, but, you know, there was some objection, but mostly, you know, most people are, well, you know, what people like having projects done in their communities and stuff. So there's not a whole lot that gets actually turned down when it comes to projects, because it adds on to the community, you know. So, and I was looking at that, I was thinking, well, you know, I think that's how the galaxy probably works also, that there's got to be extraterrestrials, a space station somewhere out there they can operate that from. And it works on the same principle, except there would be extraterrestrials out there. We don't know what they look like. There's only suggestions and stuff, but they would be on the space station, and that's where that's all being planned from. So there's a designer out there that is planning as far as, you know, what stars are going to have planets around them, what stars aren't going to maybe use later, or what, you know, whatever purpose. It's just like the, you know, that's what that data would indicate. It's not something me pulling it out of my sleeve, or, you know, trying to blow smoke up your butt. Its simple fact is that that's what the data indicates, is that's what we're looking at. So, you know, I'm not a stellar evolutionist. I see design out there in the universe, and I see a living universe, and I see extraterrestrials being a part of that universe, and it all comes down to be a very inspirational creator out there that can, you know, that we can actually, extraterrestrials can have a common scientific knowledge to be able to be created out there. Just like an artist's approach to doing art, it's inspirational because they're actually now using projects, doing projects. They can actually terraform planets. They can actually plan anything like it. I mean, there's advantages to that civilization and disadvantages. It's also very advanced science, and if it's, you know, it can be used for, you know, they're not going to war out there because it would be the end. That's the the implications of advanced science. So, you know, but either way, that's how it works from, you know, a space station I see that's being planned from, even in the nebulas and stuff, because even their stellar evolutionary theories and stuff don't implicate that. They just, you know, they just say that all these molecular clouds collapse, and they have no concept. There's no way they can explain. There's nothing out there that's going to collapse that gas. It's just a lot of hydrogen gas, and anything in gas just floats around unless you bubbleize it. So, you know, that's hydrogen is the most abundant gas in the universe. So, you know, it has a construction purpose, and it's used throughout the universe. You know, so it's one of the good points of the Kepler mission is that they actually have discovered. You know, we're getting some good information that there are planets now going around some of those suns. Now, there's interesting. I was talking about it. Stuff that was being put out in the past, advanced scientific concepts, that to me may have a validity in today's times. One of those was Descartes' Principia Philosophiae. I would say, he said the universe contains systems of bodies revolving around central stars, of which our solar system is one such world, and that the sun is surrounded by ethereal material. When it rotates, other planets are forced to orbit around it. And that these huge vortexes are created by the sun. Well, that's, you know, it's an advanced concept that goes back, you know, you're talking back to the Middle Ages that you know, it's fairly correct, you know. So, you know, there's no way they can say, well, that's, you know, that material back, you know, in the Middle Ages doesn't have any validity today, because it does, because it's the same scientific, a lot of it's the same concepts. Here's some of the, give you some of the arguments. Chamber and Moulton. Outlining in 1900 a substitute based on an assumption of the original spiral nebula, spiral or discoid, these authors still invoked a parent nebula. Much more recently, a classification of theories of planetary formation, which lists 39 different proposals, merely distinguishes between those in which planets form from unaltered interstellar material as opposed to stellar material raised to high temperatures, and between models in which the sun and planets formed at the same time rather than separately. All of this set off from its nebular disk, similarly to the opening sentence of a review of research on the early Earth published in 2014, speaks of the processes that assembled dispersed dust and gas in the solar nebula. Well, there's a lot of dust out there. We get dust all the time, and there are explanations for how that dust materialized. They don't really have. There's shock waves or asteroids that may collide and stuff. It takes energy or heat to actually get dust. Energy to get dust to clump together. It's the same principles of a room ionizer, and it will take that interstellar dust and will concentrate the dust. It starts making the dust clump together, and then it gets sucked into the room and into the ionizer. So there's an ionization process out there in the universe that can be, there's something that can be some kind of form of energy that can be utilized out there that will take that dust and start clumping it together, but it's something that's done by applied science. It's not something that just happens out there. Here again, you're talking about the craft. You know, the question is what is that energy? Well, you know, that's we're getting more spectrometer readings and stuff out there, so it's not like observational astronomy out there isn't going to discover it, but there's, you know, there's spectrometry and stuff is getting better, so that data eventually is going to surface as to what's being utilized out there as far as the energy goes to actually create that, get that dust and stuff to clump together. But that doesn't really solve the problem, because now you got to have, you have to be able to create planets out there and planetoids, which has to involve more mass. So here again, it takes some kind of conversion. I mean, you can take the periodic table and you can start up there at hydrogen, and as you go down the periodic table and you slide on down, you end up with the radioactive elements and stuff. But all that has to do with neutrons and electrons and stuff. And so there's a conversion process. It's possibly what extraterrestrials are using, because and there's been the advanced civilizations are based on how they use energy. So actually probably a conversion process using energy that you can go from hydrogen down to the heavier elements out there, but you have to be able to figure out what kind of energy is being used, and they don't know. Spectrometry is not coming up with a whole lot either. That's one of the reasons why I go through all this research material, and to figure out they don't have that data, but there's some kind of there's some kind of energy that they're using that's going to convert that matter. It's just like the witch's ball at the center of the galaxy. That energy has the ability to spike out and convert hydrogen, which is the most abundant gas out there, into heavier elements. But how does that gas get into heavier elements? How do you create mass with that gas? Well, that's one of the reasons why I started looking at some of those quantum research stuff, and it's getting some clues and answers, but it's not totally there yet. You know, I've got books on quantum physics, and it's getting there, but it's not like they really have a anything that you can, you know, they're still in the theoretical mode, you know. So, you know, they're making grounds, you know, there's groundwork being set for, you know, for advanced science out there, where we can figure out how they do all that out there in the galaxy. So, you know, but anyway, I'm getting off track here. The cosmic background radiation. That's one of their explanations for the Big Bang theory. It's all over the universe. The radiation is also a product of utilization. So here again, we're talking about the craft. That the craft is a non-material universe that's being utilized by applied science. So it shows up as radiation. It's just an off product of you know, when you're trying to create a sun out there, or anything that's mobilized within the craft, in quantum physics does produce a byproduct of a certain level of radiation. Even UFOs, I think there's been some UFO investigators and stuff that have actually got to take readings from UFO landings and sites go, and the energy that those UFOs use do give off a certain level of radiation. I mean, the grass will be dead or something, or around it, and they've gone out there with a Geiger counter and stuff, so they can actually, you know, we know that anything in applied science, and especially with when you get into advanced propulsion systems and stuff, give off a certain level of radiation. So, you know, it's all a product of the craft, you know, and so by cosmic background radiation may not necessarily be the leftovers from a Big Bang. It's leftovers of saying, hey, ET's alive out there, and what you're looking at is applied science. So you know, it's don't take microgravity the background radiation is being proof of the Big Bang, because that's not necessarily true, you know. But also okay, yeah, here's something else. I've been studying, I got a book on sand that I'm fixing to dig into. But minerals, you know, there's questions as to how you go from heavier elements, and how does those get separated when a planet is in a process of being formed and stuff. How do you get a separation of minerals from the heavier elements? And I've already told you that there may be a conversion process, but it's also a process of heat. And when they're forming the extraterrestrials are creating a planet, if you go over to the Thunderball Research, it's on the YouTube. They got to get. I don't have the money to travel to the United States. I'm not financed, but they've got some good visual indicators of what electricity or lightning or some kind of advanced energy that evidence that the Earth was molded and created by an energy of outside source that superheated the surface of the Earth and created this planet. So, you know, there's a lot of there is some visual indicators there. The problem that you have on the Earth is there's a lot of erosion stuff. It's a lot easier to prove that the moon was created than it is the Earth. So, you know, but because of the erosion factor, the moon doesn't have much of an atmosphere, so when you're superheating the Earth, the moon and stuff, and they're creating the moon and electrifying it, I think there's not as much erosion stuff, so it's a lot more evident than when you go to the planet Earth. But if you go to the Thunderball, you'll see a lot of good pictures and visuals of areas of the world where you could actually indicate that there was an applied science out there. They don't go that far. I do. I do it on purpose because I'm really, I don't want people thinking the stellar evolution is true and that there's nothing living out there. It's just not true. The extraterrestrials do live out in the universe, and it gives people that are something to live for, whether it be even the barbarians back in medieval Europe. It gave them some sense of hope and some sense of existence, that they wouldn't always be cave creatures living in a cave out there, scare the universe out there, that they were going to eventually evolve into something that could actually join another society out there in the galaxy maybe. So, that's one of the problems I have with stellar evolution. That's not what it teaches. So, but anyways, I'm getting off my point again. But anyways, okay. Let's say we have the energy. Extraterrestrial has the energy to superheat the surface of the Earth, create a molten surface on the surface of the Earth. What is that doing? Okay, well, you're getting separation of the heavier elements are going down towards the center of the Earth and going down deeper, and you're getting your minerals and stuff on the surface of the Earth that you want to utilize, because you're an extraterrestrial and you eventually you can utilize. We use minerals all the time on the Earth, so you want all your building blocks, all your minerals on the surface. So here then it's based on design, but that process of when you melt the outer surface of the Earth by some kind of energy, it's creating that. Creates a lot of MgSO3 stellite and forsterlite Mg2S04, which are the fundamental building blocks in solar systems. A lot of that stuff out there. And so it separates both of them. So there's a lot of good data in these books and stuff, but they're still sticking in stellar evolution as being the process, and it's just not, it's really not, it's not true. But there's a lot of good data in some of these that's poured into these. The Oort cloud and stuff, there's no real clear indicator as to why there's liquid, there's frozen ice out there. It'd be a good place to, they have done some samples of comets, and let's see, here's what they found. They found on the Comet Hartley, they actually got a spacecraft out there to orbit, and they were actually taking spectrometer readings from the ejections from the comet, and they found ice, they found dust, they found CO2, and they found H2O vapors, well, you know, oxygen vapors. So which is the fundamental, the building blocks of ice in our oceans. So, you know, but the question they don't really have an answer for is why is that out there on the outer solar system, you know? And they need to be able to get some robotics missions out there. They need to be able to speed this, get some high, you know, they don't have anything, they can't get their speed up. The only way they can get their speed up is shooting a spaceship around Jupiter and using its gravitational pull to whip it around and slingshot it out there. But they don't really have a propulsion device yet that can actually push them out there a lot faster and speed the time between the Earth and the outer solar system. You know, Voyager's been out there, and hell, it's, you know, was launched in '77, I think, '78, and it just recently reached the outer solar system. You know, hell, this is the people who originally worked on the project back in the '70s, man. Well, you know, 25, 35 years have already gone by. You know, it took that long to get out there. You know, they need to get the speed up, and there's nothing yet, propulsion has come up yet that'll get us out there in a faster time frame, especially if they ever plan on going to Mars. You know, you don't want to spend 5 or 6 years going there and then 5 or 6 years having to come back. It just takes, it's too long of a time on a spaceship, and they don't have the ability to keep a human body under that long. You know, and even in the sleep phase, medical science doesn't have the ability to do that yet. So, you know, you got to get the speed up, but they found also chondrules. Chondrules are also one of the building blocks. They're aluminum rich meteorites, and they're all over the universe. The chondrites. It's calcium aluminum, and I'm going to see if I can find some pictures I can put up there for visuals, but the chondrites are all over the universe. It's one of the building blocks of solar systems, and they're a product of superheating. You know, they try to explain it that they're a product of stuff colliding and stuff out there in the galaxy, but here's the problem. There's nothing out there. They found when they looked at the molecular clouds in the solar systems, I mean in the nebulas out there, they found some heating, but it's only 10 degrees. The heating is only 10 degrees above absolute zero. So I mean there's heating going on, but you have to think in terms. The problem is there's nothing we know of that can produce that 10 degrees. You can't raise, nothing we can put out there that can raise the temperature in 300 degrees below zero, because the laws of thermodynamics, you have to take the total volume of the universe, which can't be measured, and you have to have something that can supply heat out there, and it has to be able to overcome that. So we don't even know what the edges of the universe are, so that you can't even measure that. it's also a good, here's again, is a good example of design, is that the suns, while they're hot and they're volume, they have volume, they don't, it's a conditioned environment because the total universe, which can't be measured yet, if you look at the laws of thermodynamics, the sun is a conditioned environment. So, you know, here again is a good example, that's a good example of design because it has a creator. It has a creator that utilizes the laws of thermodynamics and expands the universe out so that it's super cool and it keeps the sun's energy contained toward the sun. So thermodynamics don't really apply to solar systems creating as far as the sun goes, because as far as the stellar evolution of protoplanetary disk and stuff, that the sun is the point of melting some of this stuff. But the problem is you can only go, that melting process and stuff is only you have a certain distance from the sun. So I mean, if the sun doesn't expand out there, it has radiated heat that even astronauts can feel out there when they're out there doing spacewalks and stuff. There's radiated heat, they can feel it, but it's not something that going to melt the spacecraft, or it's going to sear the Earth, or it's going to melt the space station, because their thermodynamics are controlling the heat of the sun and make it where it makes it a habitable zone to where you can actually live in. Even Mercury, which is the closest to the sun, it's not molted. It's still very hot, but I don't think there are volcanoes on Mercury that are spewing out. But it's not like the rock out there is in a molted state. You know, even then, you'd have to even get closer to the sun to reach that molted state. It's like Icarus, the legend of Icarus, and you got too close to the sun, he started to melt. Yeah, there is a certain distance from the sun that you can get before that meltation would occur. But the laws of thermodynamics and the conditioning of the universe condition that area around the sun to a habitable zone. So here again, we're talking design that the universe was designed from based on those concepts. Oh, let's see, but anyways. Okay, here's some of the arguments to back up what I've been talking about. Deuteronium is a product of the Big Bang, they claim is Big Bang nucleosynthesis with the primordial ratio with hydrogen. Estimates on the basis of theoretical models, that's 2.61 times 10 minus 5, 0.00026133. Modeling suggests that the conditions that prevail in protostellar disks are not conducive to the production of high levels of deuterated water, as the ionization levels that are derived from galactic cosmic rays are inadequate. And a major source must therefore be pre-solar, that is to say, derived from interstellar sources via the molecular cloud. Well, we discovered in the molecular cloud that it's just 10 degrees above zero. That's not going to produce that deuterated water. It's 10 degrees below zero, and they still haven't come up with an explanation of where that heat's coming from. All it does is it shows up in spectrometers. It shows up there in the molecular cloud where the suns are being formed, but they don't have any way, they don't know, what they don't know is what's creating that temperature. So it's obviously some kind of advanced form of energy that we don't understand yet. So, you know. Here's something else of interest. The Wide Field and Planetary camera aboard NASA's Hubble Space Telescope discovered a dust disk around protostellar objects HH30, a newborn star about 500,000 years old. And you can see the stellar dust going around the star. So what you're looking at, but you don't see the telescopes. The Hubble telescope's not going to give us a good enough image of what's going on as far as the planet formations go. But it's a good picture of, a good picture of H30. So, but what's interesting about that picture is that not only you can see the dust going around the sun, you see these two spikes of energy. You see that, and I was talking about energy conversion and stuff. There's these two spikes of energy that are going up, that are coming from both poles, going out of both poles, and it goes to where the sun is actually forming and stuff. Well, as I said, extraterrestrials use the witch's ball to hold mass and stuff, so they can actually create a sun and get enough hydrogen gas out there to that sun, and it's the energy of that witch's ball that creates that spike. And you can clearly see that in the photo because you see the gas is spiked on both poles. So it's actually, what I'm saying is there's a witch's ball the extraterrestrials are using to create that sun. As far as what the contents of that witch's ball is and what they utilize, you can look at stuff with research material, whether it's over at Quantum Gravity Research and some of the other YouTube sites. Your guess is as good as mine. But when I watch, you watch those lectures, basically what they're describing is that witch's ball. So it's good information, but we still have a lack of understanding of what how extraterrestrials use that witch's ball for creation. But it is it's a backed up picture that would indicate something I was telling you earlier. There's some good diagrams on the Earth as far as the difference. I was talking earlier about a lecture about the difference in atmospheric compositions and stuff of the Earth, Venus, Mars, and all our planets and stuff. It's not consistent with stellar evolution, and they do have about 45, 50 different theories, hypotheses on how that occurred, but it's still through an evolutionary process, which to me I throw out. But there's also suggestions in these diagrams that there's an inconsistency also when you go down deep into the Earth, Venus, and Mars, and Mercury and stuff, and how much mantle is out there, how much ocean is out there, how much ice is out there, some cores, and you got an inner core, and it's not consistent, but they don't have anything out there that can go down, that penetrate that far down, it's not data that they have, and I don't think they have anything in engineering to go that far. Even in planet Earth, we've been living on the planet Earth for 5 billion years, 3 billion years, and we still have not gone to the center of the Earth. We don't have anything to go down that far, and so really in engineering, I don't think they have anything in engineering yet that can do that. So we don't even know how far, what is at the center of our Earth, whether it's hollow, it's been suggested, or whether it's got a molten core or not. But there's nothing in engineering that can actually go down that far. So so all these planets, if they come up something in the future where they can actually, radar, ground penetration radar can only go down so far. It's helping in archaeological digs. You can go out to Egypt and stuff. They use ground penetration radar, and some of the new stuff they can actually go down, you know, maybe 25 feet, 30 feet, which is good for archaeology, or 100 feet, and they can see what they need, where they need to dig to, but that's not going to be good enough to find out for sure what's at the center of our Earth or what's down below, you know. I got something else. Well, anyways, that pretty much covers some of the recent information on the solar system. I'm trying to condense a lot of that information into stuff that people can really understand. So, you know, but there's, that's about pretty much, it takes us up to about 2015 now, as far as what's out there now.